Okay, welcome back everyone in this new video development about building an auto battle game. In this video we're going to create player entry and player board. So we already add, I'm going to explain what it is. We already add something called player entry, and it's actually a lobby player entry because we're going to need at other places in the game we're going to need to display a list of players. So we're going to modularize that in two classes, one called player entry and another lobby player entry. And we're going to reuse that widget to create something like each player row in the score screen when we're going to create the score screen. And we're going to use some kind of the same logic for the multiplayer lobby, which is actually going to be a child class of another widget, which is going to be a player board. The player board is going to record itself to the game state and bind itself to the player events we got there, and it's going to receive these events, and we're going to create the score screen out of that widget, because the score screen is pretty much going to do the same thing. It's going to need to have a list of all the player states alive, and the multiplayer lobby is going to inherit from that widget, like I was saying, and is going to do a bunch of other stuffs. So it's going to need its own we're going to need a widget for that with its own logic inside. So we're going to create something in the base folder, I think, which is going to be called BP WGT multiplayer board, pretty much like player board, actually, player board. And our multiplayer lobby is actually going to inherit from the player board like this. I think it should not do anything. Yeah, it didn't do anything. So we're just going to open our player board and remove the canvas panel, hit compile, we froze, and we had it generated an error, but I think it's going to work the same way. If we hit play, do we still have if we create a game? Well, yeah, we still have it. And in there, ask for color switch. We're still going to need it. We're going to get rid of the logic inside like this, and we have start countdown, build countdown text, yeah, everything related to the countdown. We're going to keep it for now. Entries on player connect, on player left. Set is enabled if we are local. I think we're going to keep all of that logic in the event graph like this. Hit compile, go back to player connect and player left. Okay, we're going to grab that and paste it here. We're going to put some kind of comment there, backup for player join and player left, just in case we need that. Hit compile, it should not throw errors because we disconnected that. On player left we're going to get rid of this, on player connect as well. Hit compile, save. Player entries. Are we gonna store this in the parent class? I think not. Button returned, game start countdown, player container. Yeah, we do want this. We want to get rid of these events and put that in comments. Return to main menu, parenthesis, leave multiplayer game like that. Compile everything. Yeah, it's working. Set player ready. Do we want that here? Maybe we do. Maybe we do. But I think no, the player entry is gonna take care of this. So we're gonna get rid of that as well. Ask for color switch. Values. We're gonna call player values. On player team change. Set player team. I think the player entry is going to handle this by itself as well. So we're pretty much set up with that. So if we hit play, we have no errors, we can create a game, the multiplayer lobby is there. So what do we want to do in the player board? When it spawns, it wants to get a reference to the game states and cast it into our type of game states. And the generic BP game states. And what does it want to do? I suppose it wants it wants to bind itself on player joined. It wants to create a new event. Yeah, we didn't have any event, so we're gonna have some on player connected and on player left, like this. Do we use the same convention in the game state? On player joined, on player left, on player joined, like this. It's gonna take parameter player states, BP player states. In player state we want to copy this name, compile, on player join here. On player left we want to add a new parameter with the same name, and we also want to bind ourself to on player left in here, like this, on player left. And we want to make that a function, bind to game states. So when we spawn a player board, it's already having this function being thrown at, and it's gonna have another function which is create player entry, and it's going to need it's actually going to be an utility function to create an entry quicker, to not have to redo the create player entry logic all the time. Most of the basic stuff will just be creating a widget and adding it to a box, so we're going to create an utility function contained in the player board, so that each widget extending from the player board is going to quickly create, to use that utility function to quickly create a player entry. So we're going to need to create that player entry, and we're going to rename that to lobby player entry. We're going to go to base, create a new user interface widget blueprint WGT player entry. We're just going to make sure we don't have a redirector of player entry. No, we don't. So the player entry, we're going to remove the canvas panel, and it's just going to be that for now. So if we go back and open up our lobby player entry, we can make that a player entry like this. Yeah, we're gonna reparent. Oh yeah, it was a button as well. It was a button as well, so we lost track. I think we don't want that to be a button. Maybe we don't. We'll go with this. Or maybe the player entry is gonna be a button. Yeah, that's it. That's actually it. So it won't like it. So we're going to do some kind of dirty stuff. We're actually going to copy and paste the lobby player entry from the blueprint folder we created on our desk. So, and for those of you who didn't, I'm gonna give you the downloadable version of that blueprint. So we're gonna show in Explorer, actually in lobby player entry, we're gonna show in Explorer like this, and we're going to open up we're going to close our project, open up the blueprint backup we've done, and get that widget back in its name player entry, and we called it lobby player entry. So we cannot do this. But it doesn't matter. I think it's gonna I think the editor is not gonna crash when we re-add the button logic to our player entry, lobby player entry. And actually, even if it bugs, we can redo the logic real quick, so it doesn't matter. So we're going to open up the assets we add. Excuse me. And we're gonna move that here. Oh, we have a bunch of errors. Where was that? Here, player state temp name recreated, but the variable is missing. Oh yeah. So that's the error of our backup. We don't care. We don't care about that. So player entry is gonna be a button, not a user widget. WGT button. We didn't crash, hopefully. Let's compile, save, go back to lobby player entry, go back there, and it worked. It understood that we wanted to override this function, so that's fine. Set player team in the lobby player entry. I think we're gonna keep that. We're gonna keep that. So are they okay? It seems that they are okay. So new button, where do we modify that name? So the player entry is gonna take care of itself, and it's gonna need, and for that it's gonna need to have a reference to its player, to a player state, like this. So a reference to a BP. This could break connection. I think that's because that variable is used in the lobby player entry. No, it's not. So we're going to rename that to ref, for instance, and it's going to be a BP player state like this, and I think it's going to be exposed on spawn like that. And when it spawns, it's gonna grab its player state. We're gonna have a function called get player name texts, which is going to return a text widget, return value. It's going to be pure, and we're going to grab that, check if it's valid, and we're gonna set the text of that to the name of our player, like this. And we're gonna promote that to a function called update player name. So when it's building, it's gonna update its player name, and we do want that. And the lobby player entry is actually going to override get player name text, and is going to return the player name like this. So this should be automatically updated when this is created. But I guess the player entry is also going to bind itself, bind to player state, like this. So it's gonna get its player state, bind it to bind. What are we gonna bind? We're gonna bind value changes on player states value change, values changed, and it's gonna take two variables, a player state, two parameters in player states and in values, player values, and we're going to create an event out of that function like this, bind to player state. So when the player state changes parameters, it's going to call that function, and we're going to call, for example, update player name in here, which is gonna get the player name, but we don't want that. I think we want to get the player values, we want to break, and we want to get the nickname. So we are never actually storing that value. So for now, I think that for now we're just going to grab the player name just to see the logic function working before we actually handle the nickname logic. So this has, so when it's created, it has a reference to player states. It binds itself to the fact that it changes value. That when it changes value, it updates the name. It's gonna update the rest of the values we have here. So if it has a change in team color, in team ID, in slot, or in status, so I think that's all we want to do for now in here, because the player entry is actually, so it has a construct and it's calling its parents. So it's gonna call bind to player state. It's gonna call these events. So we just need to create these for now. So back to our utility function, which is going to be contained within the player board. Create player entry is gonna take a player entry class as parameter. WGT player entry class in player entry class, and it's also gonna take a parameter player states, BP player states in player state like this. And just before we forgot, I think in the lobby player entry we want to override the bind to player state logic. Bind to player state logic. We want to override that logic. Whoops. We want to override that logic and add another bind, get player state ref casts to out player state like this. And we also want to bind ourselves to the ready dispatcher we have there. Create event on ready toggle, which is gonna take, I think, two parameters, a player state and a boolean, which is, we're gonna need this and that. I think, yeah, on ready toggle we're going to rename these parameters in player states and be ready. Hit compile. So we're good with this. We have some kind of logic going on there. And we might have an infinite loop, because when we change the box, it's changing the out player on ready toggle, which is then going to be calling this, which might be modifying that. So we're just gonna do some kind of protection against this. Get checked state, no, get states. Get check is checked. Different from there. Oh, I opened the C++ symbols. I didn't want to do that. That's when you double click a node. So if we are not setting this the way it is, we're toggling on ready. So we have some kind of situation there, and I think we're just gonna get rid of that logic just for now. So we are bound, we are updating our name in here, so we need to create this. So create widgets, not create player entry, create widget, owning player, get owning controller, player, in player state there, new button name. We're not going to fit this. So yeah, I think we have maybe an overlapping property, because button has get title text, and in pre-construct, so we're not doing anything with that. We just have some kind of logic going on. Don't we, aren't we feeding the... That's quite strange actually. How our button... Okay, there was some kind of bug. That was quite strange actually. I have two event graph opened, and one were not displaying the proper stuff, I guess. So yeah, in pre-construct we are setting our title, so we already have a button name, get title text, get player name text. I think we can just return this in here. So they're going to be called new button by default, yeah, but we don't care about this because we are overriding the logic when we spawn update player name, which is getting the player name text, which is returning the same thing than this. I guess so. Maybe we just need to get rid of the get player name text function in here. Oh, not player name text, my bad. No, we don't want that. We want to get rid of the get title text function in here. We don't want to override it. Get player name text, yeah, I didn't like the fact that I deleted that, so I'm going to get rid of this. Delete get player name text, hit compile, and re-override it. Get player name text, we want our title text. No, we don't want our title text. We want our player name text this way. Yeah, we don't want to override. Yeah, it's supposed to work this way, because we are no longer using the logic to update the name of our button, and this was the name of our button. But that's what we want. We don't want the logic modifying the name of the button interfering with our logic. So we don't care about this for now. So what does it do? It creates the entry, and then it returns the created entry, I guess, like this. Created entry, and maybe we're going to also add a panel widget, parent widget, and we're going to add a child to that parent widget, which is going to be the player entry we just created, like this. What else do we need? We're gonna check what else do we need. I think the multiplayer lobby has the logic we need. So we were storing this, we were adding it, so that's what we did. And that logic is going to be handled now by the entry itself. Maybe we're going to need to store them indeed. Set players ready. So everything, a lot of that logic is going to be handled by the entry itself, which sounds way more logical. So I think we can be calling create player entry when we have a player which is going to be to connect. So we're going to override on player joined. We're going to call the parent logic. We're doing nothing in here for now, but maybe we are going to in the future, so we need to be calling the parent logic. And we want to create a player entry. We're going to use the lobby player entry. And what player state do we want? We want that one. The parent widget is going to be our player container list. And what does it do right now? So we close our project, we want to go back to our out game menu. If we create a game, we're gonna be there. and we're there with all our friends. We can click that. Yeah, it's not going to change anything, but that's alright. We disabled that logic. This should not be anything as well. Yeah, it's not doing anything, but this is okay. If we leave, it's not removing it, so we're just going to take care of this. In the multiplayer lobby, on player left, that's where we're going to need to store our entries in some kind of reference list. But maybe it can be automatically handled by the parent. Actually, on countdown over, we grab all the player entries and we tell their checkbox that they can modify their ready status. I think we're going to get rid of that logic as well. We don't want can modify ready, we want to check that everywhere. So where is it used already? We want to get rid of this on player ready. Yeah. We want to get rid of this. Find reference to that variable. Is it used anywhere else? We did not compile. We're gonna get rid of this. On countdown over, I think we don't want to tell anything about the player entry to the player entries here. So the outgame state, I think we can get rid of the can modify ready status in here. Yep, we can. So we don't need that. In the multiplayer lobby, we were overriding the logic when we join and when we leave, and we wanted to create some kind of logic in there. When we create an entry, we want to store that in a list of entry, but maybe we want to delete this list of player entries. Is it still used? Yeah, it's still used. We're going to remove this. Hit compile, hit save, delete that. Once again, compile, player board. The player board is going to have a list of player entries. I think it's going to use a player state as parameter. It's going to be a map of player entry. Hit compile. So when we create an entry, it's going to be stored right away in the list of player entries, like this. And remove player entry is going to be called automatically when a player leaves, I guess. So remove player entry. In the player board, it's gonna find the entry of this and it's gonna remove that from its parent, like this. And the multiplayer lobby is actually just gonna do this for now. Like this. Hit play, create game. I'm there. Find game. We're gonna set multiplayer in the game instance. We are there. We're gonna live, and it's not removing it from the list. So I guess that's because we're never calling the dispatcher in our game states. On player left, in here we are never calling this, I think. I want to find every node like this. On unit desk, game system, okay. Handle disconnected player, current feature. I think I just want to disable them for now, but I think it's tied to the same problem which we are dealing with. Game instance, network, leave game. We're gonna make that network like this. Now it's gonna be all about network in the game instance, which sounds logical if we think about the tech design I shown. So if we hit play, nobody lives. we create a game. We're gonna make the game multiplayer by default. Most multiplayer like this. Hit play. So we have two players. It's not throwing anything at us, and we're just gonna make sure it's not because of our game multiplayer game logic. So we're there. So it's kind of tedious to test, but it doesn't matter. We have to. So we're there. If we leave, it's not calling it anyway. So we can safely check with multiplayer. Well, safely, not really safely, but so we'll see how it goes. So why is it never being called on player left? Because I guess the player state never calls on player left here. But yet it did. I think it does. No, it don't. No, it doesn't. Handle disconnected player, and yet we are still calling it. Are we overriding this in our out player state? We're not, but maybe since we're not calling it anymore, it doesn't like it. Event and play, and we want to call the parent function. So if we are leaving, it's never calling it. I'm not sure why. So handle disconnected player. Is it calling normal destruction? It's not even calling normal destruction. Are we overriding handle disconnected player? We're not even doing this. So it's never ending play. That's the next print we're gonna throw, I guess. Is it never calling end play? It's not even calling end play. That's quite strange actually. End play reason. But it is definitely calling start. It is definitely calling. So that we don't want that here. We want to put there. So it's definitely calling on player join. Since we have the player entries. Yep. But we don't have on player left. For some random reason. I think we still want that here, yeah. So why? So I guess that's just going to be a bug of maybe a bug of the engine, because I guess the player state is actually being destroyed. Except if we're not using, yeah, we're using the out player state, which is indeed a child of the BP player state, so it should be, it should actually be calling the end play here. There it should be printing, because the player state is actually dying. Except if, okay, maybe it is not dying. Actually it is not dying. So maybe that's because some of the logic regarding the multiplayer lobby is messing with our... So if we click return, we tell our game instance that we want to leave, so it's destroying the session. So I guess when I leave, it doesn't destroy my player state. But we tried, we checked if the player state was being destroyed. So does out player state throw some things at us? No, it doesn't. So I might need to check out why these things are not working, because I was certain that this was called when a player state lives. And what if we just say that we want to open level like this? Yeah, we have many prints going on. So a clean disconnection does not throw an end play at our player state. So it will mean that we will need to refactor some of the logic regarding this. I guess we will just need to say that we want to go disconnected. So we will need, in our player state, we will need our custom events server modify values, and have another custom event named request modify values. In request modify values, we're going to check if we are local. Is local player state. If we are local player states. So request modify values, this is going to be run on server and reliable, and we're going to be calling this, and this is going to take player values as parameter, new values, and it's going to set the player values like this, and this is going to be passed as parameter. So I guess what we're going to do here is to say that we're gonna handle this like that, so it's telling the player state that we left, and I guess that when we ask to leave the game, we should actually, our player state should actually be trying to tell the server that it needs to go in the disconnected status. So this is automatically being called on network error. So that is kind of a problem in our logic there, and I'm still quite surprised. I'm just going to rerun that, because I was certain that we checked if this was working. We want to restore the assets. Like this. So the out player state bad destruction, so we joined and nothing prints out. But yeah, we did check that it was coming from that. If we are doing this dirty, it's actually not removing our player state. Maybe that's because we want to, yeah, okay. So that's quite interesting. I think that's because it should be behaving this way, so that you can keep track of keep the player states alive and keep the values you have there. And if the guy reconnects, you can you still have all the information about him or or her. So that's good, actually. That's good. We just need a way to tell the game that the player states modified his status to go disconnected. Handle disconnected player. So this should be called when. This should called quit. On player left to the game state. When we try to leave the game. We just need a way to warn, to call that logic when we leave the game here. And I don't want to... What does the diagram say? The game instance is actually... I have a trouble with that arrow. So the player state is supposed to be calling the game instance. Okay. So well, I guess I know how. On find incomplete, we need a new dispatcher. Dispatch on leave. Dispatch on leave game. We're gonna call this here, like this. Not in create game, not at all. In leave game, like this. And the player state. Is local player state? No, we don't want that. So we want, maybe no, we actually want the multiplayer lobby. Do we want that? No, because is already the one calling the leave game logic. So I guess the player entry. I'm kinda confused there. So the game, so we know we're gonna leave the games at some time. I'm just gonna get rid of them. So I'm slowing it down just so we don't make an error to go too fast once more. So when we try to leave, the game instance tells anyone that would like to know. And who would like to know that? The game state. But only the local game state is going to retrieve that. So actually not the game state. It's necessarily going to the player state. So the player state wants to know that. So yeah, that's what we need. We need the player state when it tries to check for player name. I guess is also gonna bind to game instance in the initialization, like this. Bind to game instance, get game instance, cast to BP game instance, bind to on leave game, create event. And what do we want to do here? We want to change our status. So it's only gonna be local. This one is only gonna be local. Or else the server is actually, when a player state spawns, the server is gonna cast this as well. So if any player leaves, it's gonna do this. So we don't want this to happen. we only want this to happen when on a local, in local. So we're just gonna remove this, and the player controller, which tells that guy, is actually gonna create events out of this, and it's gonna grab the game instance. It should be better if that player state was doing it itself. So yeah, we're setting the local player state in here. That's quite perfect, exactly what we wanted. We want to get the game instance, and we want to bind to cast it into our type of game instance. Yeah, we've done it the proper way. We add a function ready for us in here, and I forgot about this. So we want to bind on live game, and what do we want to do here? In the player state, we want to ask to modify our player values. Require leave game, no, on game left is gonna be disconnected, and in undo disconnected player on quit we're gonna call this as well on game left. And we're not gonna be calling bad destruction or normal destruction. So this is gonna be called as well from the game instance, so we don't want an infinite loop, so we're gonna remove this, I think, for now. So on game left we want to tell the game state that we left. On game left. So when I quit the game, it's gonna call on game left, which is gonna call on player left. Player left. So only on client. Yeah, because that's absolutely not what we want to do. So on game left, we want to be modifying our values, our player values. We want to be calling request modify values. Like this. We want to get our values, and we only want to modify the status. So I guess we're going to create a utility function to do that. Modify player status, and this is going to be located in the values folder, and modify player status is just going to do what we want, modify that status, and it's going to break the variable, the value. Oh yeah, and we're going to have a problem with this. Because if the clients modify his values too quickly, he might erase the previous value he was trying to set. Except if it sets them right away. I think that's it. I think that's going to work. So request modify values is going to be calling this. So when a player leaves, we want to modify. On game left, we want to modify our player status to disconnected. And the game state itself, is gonna receive. So we didn't bind ourselves to the values of the player, but we want to do this. On values changed, on player values changed, player values and player states. Like like this, and we want to create that event and to be calling this. So we want to break the values, we want to check the status. If it's equal to disconnected, we are actually going to be calling the event on player left like this. So now we are leaving, and it's gonna remove this, and if we didn't want to create a game, so we are there, we're gonna return, we're gonna find games, and we're not finding any games, and I think that's because we didn't create one properly with that guy. Yeah, that's because the game by default is not created with the listen server options, but maybe we can tell the game to do that. Additional launch parameter, maybe if we type in listen here, maybe it's gonna work. I'm not sure, but if it is gonna work, we need to try. It's not working, so we're gonna remove this. We don't want that. Plain standalone game. Okay, maybe that's not what we wanted to do actually. Maybe that's PIE stuff, but we can be setting PIE settings. So I guess we're just gonna tell the game instance that we are no longer multiplayer. We're gonna create a game, bad destruction, blah 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 blah, lots of stuff. And that's actually quite strange that we receive as much. So we are there, we're gonna return bad destruction player left and find games. And we're back at it, player join. So I'm not sure if it's are we actually already recording the players there? No, we're not. Oh yeah, that's a good thing actually that we're not. I'm wondering if the when I rejoin, do I have the same player state than before, or do I have a new one? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. But it's going to wrap up that video. We'll see in the future how it behaves. Anyway, we advance on our cleanup, on our cleaning. So it's taking a little bit longer than I expected. Everything is taking longer than I expected, but we are trying to do things the right way. So I hope you guys don't mind. And I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.